What's going on, and welcome to the NBA DFS Q&A show. My name is Tom Vecchio. I'll be here for the next 30 minutes taking your questions about tonight's 9-game NBA slate. You can find this every Wednesday at 4 o'clock on the FanDuel, YouTube, Twitch, Facebook, Twitter pages. You name it, it's there. You can follow me on Twitter at DFS_Tom. 9 games on tonight's slate. It's looking like a good one. We have a lot of games that are leaning towards higher totals, which is, of course, great to see. Plenty of scoring, plenty of fantasy upside. We have a few injury notes to look at for some key players we'll certainly get to. We also have a lot of value on this slate. Jumping right in, we got a question from Grim on YouTube. How do you feel about Corey Kispert, Joshua Primo, or Max Strus tonight? Personally, I'm siding with Kispert, slightly ahead of those two. But I would certainly have some shares of Max Strus as well. I think that's going to be a really good game environment between the Hawks and the Heat. I'm really liking that for some fantasy production, as well as the other ones. Like, there's no doubt that the Spurs and the Rockets is probably shaping up to be my favorite fantasy game of the slate. So I have interest in all those players. It's obviously to varying degrees. Why is the Bulls game so late tonight for being a central time zone? Grim's also asking, that's a great question. I would love to know why the 10 o'clock start for Chicago is there. I assume it's due to just TV scheduling, whatever it might be. Which small forward or shooting guard do you prefer? Keita Bates-Diop, DeAndre Hunter, Malik Monk, David Duke, or Lonnie Walker? Personally, I wrote up Lonnie Walker, so he's my number one. I wrote him up as one of my 3 value plays on tonight's slate. It was him, Onyeka Okongwu, and Corey Kispert. So certainly siding with Walker a little bit. I like Malik Monk. We know that 3-point shot can get going for him, providing plenty of scoring upside. He can have a low floor at times, and as long as the 3-point shot gets going, he has a very high ceiling. I'm obviously not worried about the matchup against Sacramento. I love this game environment as well. So it's buying into Monk, his potential ceiling, the weak matchup against the Kings. We're not worried about their defense, and the overall strong game environment. The Lakers are number 1 in the league in pace. Sacramento's sitting at 6th. We are looking at plenty of back and forth action. So I like Walker, Monk as my clear 1 and 2 out of that group. Keita Bates-Diop, DeAndre Hunter, I think these guys are clear secondary options to Walker and Monk. So those are my top 2 absolutely in that group. Daniel Gafford or Mitchell Robinson? That's a good question for the mid-tier at center. I'm going with Gafford. I love this matchup going up against Orlando. And also just looking at the slate overall, like a 204 over-under really isn't super encouraging between the Mavericks and the Knicks. 213 isn't amazing, but it's simply better than the Mavericks and the Knicks. Just looking at this matchup, 30th and 29th when it comes to offensive pace. That is just so bad for both of these teams. Not saying that Washington and Orlando is massively better, but they're in the mid-tier compared to Dallas, New York, who are just dead last. So I'm siding with Gafford. Due to the game environment, the matchup is also easy for him going up against Orlando. They're in the bottom 10 against center. So a few factors working in Gafford's favor ahead of Robinson for me. When it comes to some player props on tonight's slate, if anyone's interested in that, I took the over on Lonnie Walker, 21.5 points. I took the over also on Dwight Powell, 13.5 points, rebounds, assists combined. Like I said, not super interested in this game overall. I just think that this line for Dwight Powell is a little bit low. He's past this line, 13.5. He's been past this in 6 straight games. And I think matchup-wise, he's going to be out there for plenty of minutes. He has to match the size, or Dallas has to match the size of Randall and Robinson. So, 13.5 isn't bad when he's been in, double-digit real points in a lot of these recent games. So he could certainly, pass this, 13.5, I would say pretty easily. And especially if we're going to be seeing the under hit on 204, that means there's going to be plenty of missed shots and plenty of rebounds. So I took the over on Powell, the over on Lonnie Walker, the over on Lonzo Ball, 24.5, 23.5 points, rebounds, assists combined for him. Where is it? It's 24.5. So I have that. I would certainly side with the under in the Knicks game overall. I'm not super interested in that. As I said on the Daily ISO, the podcast today, this Celtics-Pacers game, I think from a match perspective, it's fine. We saw them play a couple days ago. But again, just in context of the other games on the slate, I'm not super interested in too many of the options from that game. I think going to Charlotte and Philadelphia is awesome. Miami and Atlanta, I think, could go slightly overlooked considering how strong Houston, San Antonio, LA, Sacramento, and Brooklyn, Chicago are. So we're working with tiers of the games tonight, where there's some very, very clear ones at the top, a few at the bottom, then a number in the mid-tier. Jerry on Facebook is asking, Walker, Murray, Keita Bates-Diop, Jakob Poeltl, maybe Christian Wood. What are your thoughts on what could be a game stack? I love this game. I mentioned it on the podcast. Both of these teams just play super fast. 5th and 3rd when it comes to pace for San Antonio and Houston is absolutely awesome. Both teams also in the bottom 8 of the league. Houston's dead last in the league. I don't think that should come as a surprise to anyone. And this is when it comes to average FanDuel points allowed per game to all positions combined. Houston's dead last, and San Antonio sitting as the 8th worst team in the league. So grabbing a number of options from this game is absolutely a route that I know I will be going. Like I said, Murray's the cover guy for today's for the thumbnail on YouTube. So I have a ton of interest in him. I wrote up Lonnie Walker today. I'm taking the over on Murray's points. Christian Wood was the cover on the Daily Helper by Austin Swaim on numberfire.com. So all the options in this game are totally in play. Born on YouTube is saying DeAndre Hunter, Caleb Martin, Eric Gordon, or Dorian Finney-Smith. Out of that bunch, I would side in order. I'd probably side with Caleb Martin, Hunter if he plays, Gordon, and then Dorian Finney-Smith. Finney-Smith I think is a fine option, but again, this game with a 204 over under when he's not a primary usage player is not something I like going towards. If I'm going to a lower over under game, I'm going to be sticking with the main usage players. Jerry's saying, do you think that will fly in a GPP? Sure. You're getting exposure to the players that have the best game environment and all have access to a ceiling because their matchups are not tough, high over under, et cetera, et cetera. Who would be your core at center tonight? So paying up for Embiid is absolutely one of my, goals on tonight's slate. I want to have him in a large portion of my player pool. And this, you're asking for 150 max. So it all depends on how you were prioritizing some of the other players on the slate as well. I love Joel Embiid tonight. That's without a doubt. I also wrote up Onyeka Okongwu for the Atlanta Hawks. I think he's in a spot for a lot of minutes. That should not be a surprise. He's 3,900. And I'll merge this into Bourne on YouTube. His next question, he's asking Okongwu or you're at 7. I don't think that's a direct question because as we can see, they're pretty far apart when it comes to their salary. I like them both for different reasons. I like going to Onyeka Okongwu because the salary relief is awesome. That allows me to pay up for Murray, Trey Young, Kevin Durant, et cetera, et cetera. So there are different kind of questions. Why are you using each of those players? Because they're at different salaries. So I like both of those centers. Now going back to Dwan on Facebook, his question, I'm going to those two as a low salary play, a mid salary play, and then going to Embiid up at the top. I think they're all great for their own specific purpose. I also think Vucevic is in a great spot. We have seen, this is something I mentioned on the podcast. We have seen the Nets defense take a step back. They were bad in the beginning portion of the season. They got better, and they have certainly regressed since then. They're also going to be without LaMarcus Aldridge, and I think Vucevic is in a spot to easily post a double-double tonight. I love this game environment overall with a 234 over under, a 236.5 over under. It's got bet up a little bit. And just the matchup is fantastic for him. So I'm going to different centers at very different price, at salary tiers for different reasons. So Embiid, you're at 7 in the mid tier. Going to Onyeka Okongwu, I think, is great. Christian Wood, if you want to roster him at the center position, that's totally fine. And then Jakob Poeltl, I think he's also a very, very solid option. Should be in for plenty of points against Houston. Again, another player in this game that will be very solid. Levine and DeRozan should be popular, right? Or that's just my thinking. That's what Jerry on Facebook is asking. I think so. Again, this game environment is one of the best on the slate. For some reason, Levine is 7,200. Yeah, 7,200. I think that's a very affordable salary for him. Back and forth pace in this game should be there. Levine can step out and hit plenty of threes. So DeRozan, Levine, all in my player pool to start. I'm into Schroeder and Okoro. How about you guys? Isaac Okoro for Cleveland. Pretty sure he's ruled out. It just get clarification on that if he is ruled out. Or do you mean just get clarification on the name? Or Chuma Okeke? Is that get some spelling clarification there? How many minutes do you think Thomas Bryant gets tonight for his season coming into the season finally? That's a good question because the Wizards could obviously use him out there. That's a player they've been missing for a while. I mean, let's see what he's projected as if this is updated for Thomas Bryant. Like 10 minutes, like that's I wouldn't say he goes past 15. Like I think that's probably real, like 10 to 15 at most. They're gonna have to get him into the offense, get him up to game speed, all those sorts of things. So I'm not expecting a whole lot from Thomas Bryant. I know they're on a back-to-back. So what would what Washington is? So what's their big man rotation is still going to be Gafford, Montrezl Harrell, and then he's going to be picking up minutes after them. So yeah, like him playing at most 15 minutes is probably what we're going to be seeing. So I'm not interested in Thomas Bryant. I know he's $3,800, but that's what it would be. So you mean Chuma Okeke for Orlando? Yeah. So Chuma Okeke for Orlando. He's a player I go to, I want to say somewhat frequently. I will say I probably only go to him as when he's the chalk. This varying high ceiling, low floor type of stuff, I think is fine in tournaments if that's where you want to use him. Ultimately the matchup against the Wizards, I think as we saw last night, like struggling against the Thunder is not a good look. And if he's going to be out there for 30 plus minutes, it's going to be good. We just know that most of the usage in the Orlando offense is going to Cole Anthony and Franz Wagner. So I like him as a tournament option, especially if you're willing to embrace that variance. I just don't always go, that far down the usage chart for a lot of teams. Robin Lopez is in play with the bigs out for Orlando. Totally fine. It's, he is going up against his former team. So if you want to factor that in, Robin Lopez is a player. I'll say that I'm not often on when I'm not on him and he's not actively in my player pool. And a lot of times he has those like weird double games where he just crushes value. So I have taken the L on him a couple of times and I don't always seem to get him right. I will say this is a fine spot for him though, going up against Washington. So this is one of the games I think falls into, the mid-range between the Celtics and the Pacers. I think that it falls into the mid-range. I want to say maybe a little bit of this game with Dallas and the Knicks clearly being at the bottom. So we want to be focusing in on the teams and the players that are in games that are the most conducive for fantasy production. I want to say this by far number one on the slate for me. And then it's a toss up between the Lakers and the Kings and the Nets and the Bulls, just because, especially if we see, we have some injury updates. We want to see that Harden and Irving both play for the Nets. I think that they both will. They had a day off yesterday. Harden didn't play in their most recent game when they were at Portland. So I'm thinking they both should be good to go. Whether or not Seth Curry plays tonight, I don't think is a massive deal. We know we can be looking to Furkan Korkmaz if he's not there. If Kemba Walker is not going to be playing, we look to potentially Alec Burks. We know that for the Knicks, although, again, not super interested in that game overall. We should be seeing some pretty straightforward stuff from the teams and their lineups tonight. He's got to get a spot to give him a chance. I think you're referring to Robin Lopez for the Magic. I totally agree. There are minutes going to be there for him against the Wizards. The Wizards, I think that this line opened up at 8 or 9 or 7 or 8, whatever it was for the Magic. Maybe it was 9 when it opened up. I think I have a little bit of interest in the Magic just going up against the Wizards. They're on the back-to-back. They're a little bit shorthanded. They looked really average last night against the Thunder. So a little bit of value, I think, potentially with the Magic at +6. Maybe you got them earlier in the day if they were at +7. So that's a spot that I'll be looking. I would side with the under in this game. I like the Hawks in this game, especially if we get confirmation that all their players are good to go. The Heat are just so shorthanded right now. Not a spot that I necessarily want to be looking too often. The Lakers in Sacramento, I think that this game will have a ton of scoring. I have multiple players that have already been in my player pool. I know Carmelo Anthony is listed as questionable. So if he doesn't play, I guess that opens up some extra minutes potentially for THT and Austin Reeves, depending on how big or small they want to run things. But more importantly, I'm focusing on LeBron James and Malik Monk as probably my two favorite options from the Lakers. I mentioned it early on the podcast about Westbrook, where first off, I think his salary is very affordable at $8,200. $8,400 for Westbrook. This is an awesome game environment between two teams in the top 6 of the league in offensive pace, and he's probably going to be going slightly overlooked at point guard, given the other options that we have. So, I spoke about this on the podcast. He's interesting to me tonight a bit more than he normally is. So that's also a spot that I think I may take a little bit, more shares of Westbrook than I normally do. But for me tonight, I think this is where a lot of things are going to be starting. It's going to be with Lonnie Walker. I want some Murray in there. I certainly want Joel Embiid in my lineups. And if I'm not going to Embiid, it's probably going to Onyeka Okongwu to get the value at center to really open things up. At small forward, Kispert is certainly an option at min salary. You can be looking to solid game from him last night. I wrote him up on numberfire.com today as one of my favorite value plays. I think, he could be out there. If Curry doesn't start, we can be getting some Korkmaz in there as well. And you're working with some solid salary left to kind of maneuver your lineup any way you want it. So I'm spending up for Murray and Embiid as my main two top stars on tonight's slate. You heard a rumor that the Bulls were interested in trading White, DJJ, and TBJ for LeVert and Sabonis. Any truth to that? If you're in the, I have no truth to that. I mean, I'm a big Sabonis fan. It would just wonder like how that offense would work with. It would be what? Ball, LeVert, Levine, DeRozan, Sabonis, and Vucevic. Like that's a loaded offense of players. But I mean, they would have to make it work of who's giving up some shots to whoever joins them or whatever it might be. I mean, I haven't heard that, but that would be a big trade. A lot of guys who were priced high are dropping like crazy. I mean, that happens sometimes just given the, fluctuation of a game to game. I think Westbrook is one of those players. I think Donovan Mitchell, 8,500, is a player that could be going a bit overlooked. LaMelo Ball is only $8,000. So the guard position is, I want to say, very, very strong tonight. I know a lot of people will be looking back to Spencer Dinwiddie after, huge game last night. Obviously, with no Bradley Beal, we know that plenty of the offensive usage is going to him, going to Kyle Kuzma as well. Good matchup against Orlando. I certainly like that spot. This is really where a lot of my core is going to be starting. And if it's not going to be Embiid, as I said, I'll drop down to Onyeka Okongwu, take that value there, and then look to the forward position and try and get some Durant, get some DeRozan at shooting guard here. Try and pay up for some of these players, and then still look for the value with maybe it's gonna be Primo. Take some shares there. Go to back to small forward. Take some more of Kispert at 3,500. I mean, Murray, DeRozan, Durant all have 60-point upside. We're getting immense value out of Kispert and Onyeka Okongwu. I'm on board with any combination of Murray, Durant, DeRozan, Embiid. I mean, you name it tonight. There are so many different ways to go about lineup construction. Did you do the Sony Open already? I didn't do that. That was Brandon Gadula and Jim Sonis. They did that yesterday, I believe. That can be found on the FanDuel YouTube page. The video's there. It's also up on the FanDuel Podcast Network. You can find that also on numberfire.com. Russ is low, Zach is low, Randall's low. Yeah, like I said, I'm interested in Westbrook tonight because I think he's going to be going overlooked just due to the other options that we have at point guard. But realistically, this is an awesome matchup. High over-under. The Kings do not play defense against point guards. We know that. And if he's going to be going overlooked, especially in tournaments, that is great. How do I feel about Whiteside, Len, Hurdle? Who would you stay away from? Also, would you stay away from Stanley Johnson? Stanley Johnson, yeah, definitely a player that has not been making my player pool lately. A player that does not see a whole lot of offensive usage. His minutes are certainly there, but not a player I am a fan of going to. Out of that group for centers, Oh, Mr. Whiteside, Len, and Jakob Poeltl. I would put Jakob Poeltl number one, just because I think that game environment is the best. I would then go to Whiteside after that, and then Alex Len in that order. I would still say I would take Jakob Poeltl and then probably Onyeka Okongwu ahead of either Whiteside or Len. Is Rashawn Holmes back? This is what Jerry is asking. Would you play Rashawn Holmes? Isn't he still on the G League assignment for the Kings? Is he back? This is updated. He's cleared against the Lakers. He'll be on a G League assignment. That was Tuesday. So if we get some update for Rashawn Holmes, that would potentially be interesting. I mean, that's just something we may not have until later because it's a West Coast game, because that info was from Tuesday. So if he's ready to go, maybe. Ultimately, it would come down to the information of when I have it, is late swap available, et cetera, et cetera. So that's just something we can't answer right now. So overall on this slate, again, Luka's great tonight. We always can be looking to him. I mentioned him on the podcast this morning, but you want to be limiting your options from this Dallas-New York game. I'm personally going to be limiting my options from the Boston and Indiana game. Again, it's comparing it to the other games on the slate. Like, what is the opportunity cost of taking more players from this game and then giving up players from the other games? So that's ultimately what it comes down to. I want a few shares of Luka, but I'd rather have more shares of Murray going up against the Rockets. So that's the kind of thought process I go with. It's like, these players in their own are great, but we have to look at them comparatively to the other options at their position on the slate overall. So that's where I'm going. As a recap, again, I took the over on Lonzo Ball, points, rebounds, assists, the over on Murray, his points is sitting at 21.5 going up against the Rockets, and then Dwight Powell over 13.5 points, rebounds, assists combined. Like I said, this game's not exciting overall. Specifically from a fantasy perspective, I think there's a little bit more value when it comes to the betting angle for that game. 500 type of night on FanDuel. I mean, points could certainly reach that high. The top of the leaderboards could certainly reach that high with some of the expectations we are seeing from some of these games when it comes to scoring. Very high over-unders, super close spread. This spread looks bad compared to the others, but I don't think it's that much of an issue. High over-under, close spread, two very good teams between Philadelphia and Charlotte. We should see plenty of scoring there. And then I think Atlanta and Miami. Atlanta and Miami is the spot that we could see a lot of scoring. I'm also very interested in Trey Young. I mentioned him on the podcast. Obviously, his usage and production has been awesome, but more importantly, look at this. Miami giving up the fourth most three-pointers per game to their opponents. What is Trey Young great at? He's great at stepping back and knocking down those threes. Given the just lack of defense that we've been seeing from Miami, the overall thinned out roster that they have, I'm looking there. We look to Miami this season right here. Miami is leaning as an over team. That's not something we've been able to say a whole lot over the past couple seasons. They actually lean towards the over, so they are playing in higher scoring games. If we're getting a higher scoring game against Miami, what does that mean from Atlanta? It probably means that Trey Young's going to be knocking down a whole lot of threes, so I have interest in him. This is why I have interest in Young and Murray ahead of Luka. Again, comparing Luka to the other options at point guard, we can make the case that Murray and Young are both better. So tonight's slate, the fact that this Bulls Nets game is at 10 p.m. again is beyond me. But we need some updates on Irving and Harden because that changes things. Either if they're both out, then we are getting immense value from the Nets potentially. That's hypothetically if they're both out, we just don't have that information yet. And then that would make Durant, an absolute lock play because all the offensive usage would be going to him. So, that's something we'd love to have earlier. We simply don't. It would also change roster construction because it would change what positions you are prioritizing spending salary at. And right now, I think it's looking like center with Embiid and then the guard position with Young, Murray, maybe one option at forward, and then taking value wherever you can find it. So I'm hoping that Harden and Irving play. I am personally expecting them to play. I have my like allocations and everything set under the assumption that they will be playing. I get the news the same time as you guys do, so I am ready that Harden and Irving will both be playing tonight. Aaron on YouTube's asking over 230.5 for LA and Sacramento. That's the way I am leaning for this game. Two teams that play just so fast. The Lakers are really average this year. That's what it comes down to. They're playing in these higher scoring games. They're not great on defense. We know Sacramento is bad on defense. So that is a spot that I would take the over. Jerry's asking, do you have a potential Sours lineup? What do you mean by that? Like a lineup where everyone is just the pivot? Or if I get some clarity on the Sours lineup, do you mean like who were the pivots, a player that you were initially looking to but then don't go to, no one else is on? Oh, Spurs. Oh, that's a little bit different question. For the Spurs, I think that we're going to see Murray. We'll see Jakob Poeltl. We will see some of the value with Lonnie Walker, Keita Bates, Diop all be very, very popular. So going to, you can go to 6,300. You want to get some, Jalen Green in there. He isn't expensive. Like, you're getting multiple options from this game. So I am all on board with this game. Again, this game, Brooklyn, Chicago, LA, Sacramento, and Charlotte, Philadelphia are my top 4 games on the slate. Next up would be Miami and Atlanta, and then Cleveland, Utah, Orlando, Washington, kind of all grouped together. And then by far, Boston, Indiana, Dallas, New York at the lower tier, like spots that I'm really not looking for a whole lot of options. I don't want to be overexposing myself to games with 204, 207, 210 over-unders when there are games that have over-unders that are 20 points higher. Yeah, Spurs can sour too. Hopefully they don't sour tonight because I am already on board with a lot of them. Like I said, the over on Murray. I have the over on Murray's points. His points, rebounds, assists is, I think, is at 38.5, right? 38.5 or 39.5. Points, rebounds, assists. It's actually not listed anymore. Whatever injury information changed from this morning got taken down briefly, but 38.5 or 39, I think, is obviously a very reasonable spot for Murray. I like the over on his points to start. I think that's where I'll be looking. I guess all the Spurs props are taken down at this point. They'll be up later, but it's still a really, really good matchup. Miami's averaging 11 points per game last 5, playing a bottom, 115.8 points per game last 5 games, playing a bottom 6 defensive team. Yeah, like I said, Miami is a team that leads or is leaning towards the over recently. And, that's not a spot that we have seen them in the past few seasons, especially, given the fact that they have no Bam Adebayo, no Jimmy Butler. So if they're playing faster and they're putting up all these points, and the game's going to be hitting the over, this is a spot for not only Miami, but also some options on Atlanta. Like I said, Onyeka Okongwu is going to be very popular. I'm big on Trey Young tonight. I think the 3-point upside is very clearly there for him. I think we are in for a great slate of games tonight, 9. We want to be focusing in on the ones that we know are super strong, avoiding the games with the lower over-unders, get a little bit of clarity on the injury situation for the Nets. I think we are in a spot to, wrap things up. That does it for today's show. I'll be back next week at 4 p.m. right here on the FanDuel, YouTube, Twitch, Twitter, Facebook pages. You can follow me on Twitter at DFS_Tom. Until next time, good luck in your contests.